their own explanation for what happened here? Because you're referring to media reports here. Did you talk to any of the police departments about the details of this case? And if so, what did they tell you?
Almost everything I've said, I'm referring, I have the actual documents here, and I'm referring to police reports.
You haven't talked to anybody in any of these police departments about what went down that day?
I talked to the Commissioner of Public Safety. Well, I have their words. I know what they wrote in their police report.
Right, but I mean, you didn't have a discussion with him about their quote side of the story?
I did. Well, I know what their side of the story is. I talked to the Commissioner of Public Safety.
What was that discussion about?
That was about our concerns, which we've shared here with you today, about what happened. I mean, there is a factual record of what took place. He said he'll look into it. And a few hours later, the governor issued the letter that you have. So I'm assuming everybody sees what we see here, which is somebody, or maybe more than one person, made an extremely serious mistake in judgment. I think that goes without saying. And I think, you know, in fairness to Mr. Krajewski, I certainly would hope the State's Attorney's Office would drop the charges immediately. There appears to be no basis for them whatsoever. But beyond that, there's an important message. I mean, this is clearly an attempt to intimidate a journalist. And, you know, just add one other comment here. You know, I think in part this is a result of the emergence of bloggers in the political scene. You know, I think what happened in the Lieberman-Lamont campaign and elsewhere has changed. You know, we understand that this is not traditional journalism. It's different. It's slightly more in your face, and appropriately so, because I think a lot of people can't get away with what you could get away with in the good old days. Not politicians, not the police, not a lot of people. And I think this is healthy for the process. And guys like Ken Krajewski, you know, being both an advocate and a journalist and having the ability to publish stuff immediately is, you know, it's an important safeguard on all of us. And, you know, I get criticized, Denise gets criticized, Chris gets, we all get criticized on the blogs, but, you know, that's the way it goes. It goes with the territory. But I have this thing about the police getting involved in political type investigations or conduct, and I think this is motivated more by politics than it was by law enforcement, because there's no way you can explain, unless there's some complete aspect of the story which hasn't been told yet, which I don't think is the case, because if it were, I'm sure, based on the people I've spoken with, I've heard about it already.
And I think
it is a big problem.
I think it also begs the question, who else is on the list?
Me?
Possibly, yeah. Could be someone here, it could be one of us as elected officials. There's a real serious issue when government agencies of any type have some type of a list of people that they deem to be a threat to another public official, in this case the governor. You know, I've at many times disagreed with the governor vigorously. Does that mean I'm put on a list? If I was there with Ken, would I have been arrested if I assisted him maybe holding his backpack while he took the picture because I was on that list? It's a very disturbing and frankly has a very chilling effect on political activism. It says to people, you know, watch out before you do something because you may be on a list, you may be arrested, and that's very dangerous. I think it begins to shut down public speech, the right to protest, which is all guaranteed under the Constitution. That's a very dangerous threat to the document that we hold true to our values and principles, which is the Constitution.
And, you know, by the way, this would be different even if he was standing on the side of the street shouting at the governor. But he was standing there taking photos. That's all he had done.
There were two comments. You listed one, the one on the Connecticut local politics. What was the other comment that he may have made that would have been?
He, apparently, what was referred to as a comment on his website from early in the day, it looks like 9 a.m. on the day of the inauguration. Again, I believe this is what the police are referring to as the other comment. And the only thing I can see in here which might even arguably be relevant is this is quoting from him, and this, again, this is published. Uniformed National Guardsmen swarmed around the Legislative Office Building Tuesday afternoon in preparation for Rel's Wednesday afternoon swearing-in ceremony, making it safe from terrorists, one figures. I scoped the area because I had hoped to snap some photos of Rel during the inauguration. I want file shots so when I report on her governance, I can have fresh images for the loyal viewing audience. Unfortunately, according to Mr. Harris, who I think was the governor's press book, so I won't have much access and then go on to that. But I mean, those are the two comments that the police apparently interpret as threats to the governor. I don't see that there, you know. And you know, Ken Kraske did not commit a crime, and he was arrested, taken into custody, and held for 13 hours on a $75,000 bond. And someone's going to have to explain that.
Do we know if it was the bond commissioner who walked in and...
Yeah, we do know. According to the judicial branch, he was arrested, brought first to the Hartford Police Department, was held in custody there. The police, which is the standard procedure, set an initial bond, in this case $75,000. I'm told it was $75,000, on the charges which I'm told are breach of peace, which is what this says, and in addition to this, interfering with a police officer. At some point, the bail commissioner arrived. He was arrested about 1:30. At some point around 4:30 or so, the bail commissioner interviewed him. The bail commissioner then had to return to a different place to do a background, a record check on him and other arrestees. Later on, the bail commissioner was returning to the Hartford PD because that bail commissioner determined he should be released on a promise to appear. So this is 8 o'clock-ish, let's say. And I'm told that when the bail commissioner got to the Hartford PD, he had already been taken by prisoner transport van from the Hartford PD over to Lafayette Street, which is in the basement of the courthouse here, which is the Marshal Service operated lockup. A phone call was made over there to bring him back to the Hartford PD so he could be released from there, because apparently policy is you can't be released from Lafayette Street because neighbors had a concern about criminals being released on PTAs there. So they had to wait for the van to go back to Lafayette Street, pick him up, bring him back to the Hartford PD, where he was released at about 1 or 1:30 in the morning on a promise to appear. But that's just a preliminary view of the facts by the judicial branch. I think we need to make sure that that's exactly what happened, because, you know, the suspicion is that somebody thought it'd be a good idea to keep him locked up until the inaugural ball was over. So if that's true, that makes a bad situation that much more serious. But the bottom line is, intimidating and harassing people because they're exercising their rights as journalists or citizens is not going to be tolerated here unless they commit a crime, which is different, but he didn't commit any crimes.
You said that, so he was not, the $75,000 bail was what was requested.
No,
it was never put on him.
No,
right?
it was put on. The procedure here is that initially the police set a bond. That's the bond. That subsequently is reviewed by a bail commissioner, which can be a number of hours later, it can be the next day, depending on the circumstances. In this particular case, it was 3 or 4 hours later that the bail commissioner came and interviewed him. I mean, at that point, he had a $75,000 bond for a breach of peace. And then the bail commissioner had to go back to his or her office and make sure, check the rap sheets of all the arrestees. And based on his rap sheet, the bail commissioner recommended a promise to appear, returned to the Hartford PD, was told that Kraske had already been sent to Lafayette Street. But the police set the bond.
Put up a bond.
No, he didn't. He was released on a promise to appear at 1:30 in the morning. But the police set the bond initially that is subsequently reviewed by a bail commissioner. Now, why did the police set a $75,000 bond on somebody with, in essence, no record, who was charged with a misdemeanor, where there's nothing, you can read the police report for yourself, there's nothing there that indicates he committed any crime. How do you get a $75,000 bond? We've asked, our Office of Legislative Research have asked the Hartford Police to supply us with a list of everyone charged with a misdemeanor in the last month in Hartford, who got a PTA initially from the police officer on the scene, and who was brought back to the police department, and of the ones brought back to the police department, what were the bonds set for those people? And I'll bet you right now that none of them have a $75,000 bond where all they were charged with was breach of peace.